your enemy, will seek to establish footholds in your life. He will try to establish footholds in your life. And thank God that you came here today, but when you get home, you got some footholds you're gonna have to deal with. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to deal with them today, but when you get home, you're gonna start dealing with some footholds in your life. Paul says this in Ephesians chapter 4. In this passage, you ever remember that passage where it says that don't let the sun go down on your anger, right? So oftentimes in marriage counseling, you say to husbands, wives, like, don't go to bed and fall asleep in the middle of a fight in an argument, right? Because you know why? Because when you do that, you give the devil what? A foothold. And he loves a foothold in your life. C.S. Lewis says that evil is really just a parasite. It just gets on, latches on to good things, then it's a parasite. Evil really is nothing other than badness. Badness is just spoiled goodness. Some of you know me, know like I'm a little bit of a jokester and a prankster, and I like a good joke. And I like to be funny. And when I was a freshman in college, that's a bad time to like to be funny. Talking to some students here. When you're funny, and then older students know that, and they know you like to do prank calls, they will call on you and ask you for help in their schemes. So I had some older students who called me and said, hey, Anderson, like we're trying to get off campus. I was at this conservative Christian college, had a curfew, and there was a guard I mean, you'd think like we were in prison, but it wasn't quite. It was a Christian college prison. That's not in any of their marketing literature, I can assure you. This was not Liberty, by the way. This was a school in Minnesota. So they said, Anderson, we want to get off campus. Can you call down to the guard shack and prank them and get them to go somewhere on campus and then prop the door open for us because we're gonna go out and have some fun. And you know, being a freshman and being kind of dumb and my brain's not fully formed, I said, sure, that sounds like a great idea. Until I got a call from the president and landed in the president's office the next day. Because come to find out, like I'd stuck a little can in the door, propped the door open, and those dummies went out and were drinking, smoking weed, and I had no idea they were gonna do that, right? But I gave them the foothold. I was the one who did it. And a foothold is this. It's just a small, little, subtle door propped open in your life for the enemy. Now hear me, I'm gonna hit you with a bunch of examples because I want this to be as practical for each one of you that you're not looking around talking about somebody else's footholds. I want you to look at your footholds because I looked this week at my footholds and they're all over the place, okay? Here you go. When you see a pretty girl and that glance becomes just a little inappropriate stare, you done opened a foothold for the enemy, okay? When you have a misunderstanding with a friend and you start making unfair assumptions about what they meant or you distort their words, foothold. When somebody did something that you thought was a perceived slight against you and you start to develop just a little bit of a grudge, you know, you just really think about that thing a lot, it's a foothold. Young ladies, when you desire to be attractive, and that's a good thing. Notice a lot of these things are good things. We desire to be attractive, and you want the attention of that boy, and you start hungering for his attention just a little too much. That's a foothold. When you desire, like me, to be funny, and then you turn towards sarcasm, which I like a good sarcastic joke. You know, they say sarcasm is veiled anger. There's probably something to that. That's a foothold, that biting sarcasm. When your interest in sports or playing golf or whatever starts to become a consuming hobby in your life, it's a foothold. When your boredom starts to become, I must pick up this stupid device, and let me challenge you this week to set it down and watch how your heart will you'll do this. Like you'll just do this because you're bored and you need to be entertained. And that starts to become a distraction. It's a foothold that the enemy will use. And here's why this is important. Because your enemy will use footholds in your life as a platform to establish strongholds. Say that with me. The enemy will use footholds to establish strongholds. He will take that glance at that pretty girl that becomes a stare, and it will become at some point lust. And then it will become controlling sexual immorality, where you're looking at pornography, or you're acting out on your sexual impulses in the way the Bible says you shouldn't do outside of marriage. And that thing, that foothold became a stronghold. That misunderstanding you had with a friend becomes a false assumption, which leads to a lack of a charitable spirit. And you begin gossiping about that person, and then you move to slander. Like, how do you get to slander? Because there's a foothold in your life. That slight that started as a grudge turned to bitterness. And it turned to a spirit of revenge, and then ultimately led to some violence. You see, a foothold becomes a stronghold. The desire to become attractive becomes a desire for attention, which becomes some insecurity in your life. And you start to feel insecure about yourself, and then you become desperate, and it leads you to do things that you're surprised that you do. Your sarcasm, your desire to be funny, becomes that biting sarcasm, which then becomes like this spirit of indifference towards people. And then it becomes cynicism toward people, and then hatred. Like, how do you hate people? Satan doesn't wake up and say, hey, I got a list of people I want you to hate today, right? He's smarter than that. He establishes footholds in your life. Your interest in sports, which is a good thing, becomes a consuming hobby, which becomes an obsession for you, which becomes at some point a priority that's too high on the list. And so mom and dad, you look back over your years and you wonder, like, why don't my kids go to church and love God? Because you let something that was good become a high priority and an obsession. And you didn't realize you were planting footholds in your kid's life, and they became a stronghold for your enemy. Your boredom, your desire to pick up this device and to be entertained becomes distraction, which dads leads to you not being present with your kids in relationship right there. And then the relationships break down. And before long, lots of people are lonely. How does Satan sow loneliness? By establishing a foothold that will become a stronghold. And so church, we have to be careful and pay attention to the little things. Did you hear me? I'm not talking about the big stuff. We've got to pay better attention to the little things. Be alert. Those daily habits matter. Daily habits. You should be in the Word every day. You know, if you want to get rid of that, that sexual immorality in your life, and you want to start having a better way of looking at that pretty girl and not looking inappropriately at her, you need to get the Word in your life that says, I will flee immorality. I will flee from it. I won't flirt with it. I will flee from it. You want to get rid of gossip and slander in your life? You need the Word that says, I will put away slander. I will go to my brother and sister, and we will talk this out in a spirit of love. You want to get rid of that insecurity that's making you desperate? You need the Word in your life that says, like, I will learn to wait on the Lord. Some of y'all need to wait on the Lord for that right person in your life. You want to get rid of cynicism and hatred. I got to learn to speak truthfully about my neighbor, right? That's the Word. You want to have right priorities in your life? You need that Word that says, I will have no other God before you. No other God. You are fighting a battle. I like this, there's a song. I'm fighting a battle. You know the song? He's already won. I'm fighting a battle, he's already won. Colossians chapter 2. Listen to this word. It says this. And having disarmed the powers and the authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Jesus has already fought and won the battle for you. It's done. It's won. There's victory. There's triumph for you. There's freedom. There's release. There's deliverance. There's rescue. Whatever you need today, it's here in Jesus Christ. And you may have come in and felt controlled by any number of things that are coming to your mind right now. But I'm telling you today, Jesus, just like he was there in the synagogue, is here to rescue and free you today.